Hello and welcome to this virtual panel discussion about unity in the community as well as healing in the community, which is part of this year's Harambee Festival. I'm Bob Ray Sanders and I'm joined by some of this area's most distinguished leaders. And I won't take a long time to introduce them, but I will introduce them briefly and we'll learn more about these panel members as we go through this hour. Starting at my right, we have poet, artist, and educator, Stacy Campbell. I think she teaches at Martin High School. Next to her is State Representative Ramon Romero, Jr. Then there's the Honorable Tarrant County Commissioner, Roy Charles Brooks. Over here to my left is a person known for showing out in the courtroom sometimes, Attorney Bobbie Edmonds. Then there's school board member of the 4th ISD, Quinton Phillips, and civil rights leader and pastor, Reverend Kyev Tatum. Folks, thank you all for being here. Let me start by asking all of you to consider the times in which we're living. Coronavirus, economic recession, racial turmoil, urban unrest. Have you ever seen anything like this in your lifetime? And if so, how do you explain it, what we're into? And Ramon, I'll begin with you.
Well, growing up here in Southeast Fort Worth and in Poly, during the time of integration, or I'd say post-integration, the sort of racial injustice and the racial fights that we're seeing now, I felt like I lived through them back in the day, in the early 70s. It was a better time, and I've said many times, especially once the current administration came in, this is my greatest fear that would be welcomed back, and that we could see this again. But I thought, no, surely there's no way that'll actually come back to that level, and now we see that come back. But I'm encouraged by the people that have taken part in saying, not again, and we can do better this time. So I think that's been, there's that precedent has been set, but the coronavirus, this is something that no one has ever experienced on a state level, county level, city level, the budget shortfalls that are coming, the decisions that are going to have to be made in the upcoming years, and we don't know how many years to come. It's going to be bitter, and there's going to be lots of fights, and pretty much no one is going to be happy. So that's something that where we are. So again, that's unprecedented. So I know for us that are going into the legislature, we got a lot on our hands, and I'm sure Commissioner Brooks and the school board, the challenges that are being faced with teaching kids right now, I am glad that I'm not in your position, Q, and everyone that's here today, we have our own set of responsibilities now. So in the faith of Harambee and all of us pulling together, this is why we're here, so that we can pull together so that brunt isn't as blunt, or that force isn't as hurtful as it can be for all of us.
Roy, you've witnessed a lot in this county. Have you seen anything like this before?
I've witnessed a lot simply because I've been around for a long time.
Not that long, because I'm older than you are, so, okay. You got one too many longs on that. Go ahead.
I remember the civil rights movement of the 50s and 60s. I lived through that. I remember the murder of Medgar Evers, the civil rights workers, Schwerner, Goodman, and Cheney. I remember the fire hoses and the dogs set on people who were merely trying to claim rights supposedly guaranteed to them under the Constitution. But Ramon is right. When you take all of this history and put it in the context of a pandemic, then you've got more than a perfect storm. You've got a tsunami. we've always had science deniers in this country. Witness those who say and have said for years that climate change is a myth. And we can see climate change every time we walk outdoors. But the denial of the facts around the science of COVID-19 is not only shameful, it's probably bordering on criminal in nature. But it all works together to set up a climate in which the misery index is high and the confidence index is low. And that is our challenge, to work on both of those things. The misery index, people are suffering. The confidence index, people may not have the confidence that it takes to go out and do something about these situations. And we've got to give them a shot of confidence any way we can. I'll stop.
You have your preacher hat on. Kyev, you better watch it. Stacy, what about you?
Well, I've never seen anything like this, and I'm a teacher, and to navigate just the intricacies of getting the students back into the classroom, much less the virtual, well, dare I say disaster, but it's been very challenging for us as educators. I do not envy a school board member to make the decisions. I teach in Arlington, at James Martin, and we're doing a great job, but none of us have seen anything like this. Our students are scared, our teachers are scared. We're gonna do the best we can. We are gonna get through this. And as teachers, we will always get through whatever they throw at us. And this is not any different than that. But these times the word unprecedented becomes so mainstay now. Everything is unprecedented now.
Yeah, no, I was studying the civil rights movement in the 80s at North Texas, our alma mater, and I can remember watching, I was introduced to the civil rights movement in the 80s. I didn't have the context of being there or growing up in that movement. I just grew up poor in South Fort Worth and then was enlightened when I went to school. And I'll never forget, the connectivity for me was, I wished I was back there. You know, you wanted to be with John Lewis and Martin and all those guys, young college student, idealistic, same thing. But I never imagined that what I was studying in the 80s, we were just recycling it. And it's more visible, but the similarities are very frightening. You throw the pandemic on top of that, plus the fact that we don't have that connectivity that we had during the civil rights movement, of the fact that we had each other. And you throw all that on top of a pandemic, and it does something to the psyche, to the mind of everyone, not just the Black community who was suffering during that time. This has everyone in a position of that misery being real, of that lack of confidence. You see it even at the very top. The president did not have confidence in himself or the American people to be honest with us and just say to us, it's airborne, wear a mask. And that could have been the confidence we needed as a country to move us further and not lose the life we've lost. So you have like this multi-leveled dynamic, and you in government, it's gonna be real pretty soon here, because the numbers are not gonna add up and everybody's gonna hurt. So I don't envy any one of you all, whether you're working in the courts or government or you know, community, it's going to be tough on us all. But the reality is, the American experiment has always flourished when people rise up in these times of crisis. New leadership, old leadership, all rise up and we get through it. My prayer is that that will be the same.
Yeah, absolutely. So, no, I've never seen anything like this in my life. And so I'm 39 years old, so in that bit of existence, no, I never anticipated anything like we're seeing right now. I think what is happening now with what everyone pointed out, this convalescence of everything coming together, it's almost imploring humanity to hit a reset button. And we're really having to grapple with things that it seems that it's almost like we were on an autopilot in some way as a society. Is that we had these pockets of things, right? There were still healthcare crises going on, regardless of a pandemic. There was still racism and systemic racism happening, before Brother George Floyd had a knee on his neck. I mean, so these things were happening. We still had budgetary crises in all of our different departments, but now we no longer can just turn the blind eye to it or allow it to just stay on autopilot. Real things have to be answered now. And it's this moment now where we're having to answer the question of who are we going to be in humanity? What is our collective humanity going to look like? Because if budgets really are falling because of economic crisis, and you have to start slashing, where's the slashing going to happen, right? And so now we have to start seeing, are we going to put our money where our mouth is? So if we're talking about equitable spending and those who need the most getting the most, this is going to be the time where those arguments shouldn't be as hard to make if we really are who we're saying we are in humanity. So these things are really about to come to the forefront now, and people are really going to have to show their true colors. And much like Reverend Tatum said, it's my hope and prayer that the humanity that I believe in really is the humanity that surfaces during this time. Because if not, it really could be that death knell of what we know to be our Western civilization, our democracy, and our society as a whole. And I would hate to see us go down that path.
I've never seen anything like this, but I'm not surprised of whatever happens in this world today, because we have to be prepared to be resilient. We have to be prepared to take alternative measures to resolve problems. So right now, it is a horrible situation for those that are already economically deprived, those that are educationally insufficient, and with technology being at the forefront in the courtrooms, in our schools, it's making it difficult for everyone. So we really have to work together. Mm-hmm. There are so many issues, you guys, and before the pandemic, we were encouraging citizens to go and observe the judicial system here in Tarrant County. The deficiency of diversity on the bench, that means in times like these, we have to continue to educate individuals, young and old, to go out and vote. It is difficult now because if they can't read, if they can't have access to computers and technology and doesn't know how to maneuver that in those ways, there can be some deficiencies and voter suppression. You all, there are so many issues. And since I am in the court system, since I am a lawyer, I just see a continuation of deprivations of your constitutional due process rights, of people getting arrested because they were exercising their freedom of speech and expression. And we as lawyers and educators have to focus on how to educate them so that they will not be arrested for just doing that. And if they are, how we're going to maneuver and get before the courts when they are saying masks are due in the court, limitations are. And hats off to the commissioners, because they have to deal with these new orders weekly that are coming from the government, both federal and state. And so the issues we have, we must come together. But we all have a duty to educate, continuously educate our community so that they can be stronger. The Black community is suffering, the minority communities are suffering, and the education system is suffering. Teachers, hats off to you.
Thank you.
All of our elected officials, hats off to you if you're going to be strong and stand up and speak for what is right and don't crumble under pressure.
Okay, that brings me to the point. I mean, since the death of a young man by a police officer who had his knee on this young man's neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds, the nation has started talking about social injustice again, police brutality again, and the question of, is there systemic racism in this country? The Attorney General of the United States says he doesn't think so. I'm asking this panel, is there systemic racism in America? Roy?
Heck yeah, there's systemic racism in this.
Hey, I have to ask the question.
And that is by design. Let me tell you that, first off, racism is a disease of the heart. And racism is very, very hard to maintain day after day, year after year, generation after generation. So systemic racism became the tool by which racism was enforced in daily life, so that the slave owners after emancipation and their ancestors and their descendants down through eternity would not have to daily enforce the rituals of racism. They inculcated it into our legal system, our systems of government, our systems of social interaction, so that after a period of time, it became a self-enforcing concept. And those who ultimately benefited from it could claim clean hands. It's not me doing this. I've never done this, that, or the other thing. Well, systemic racism is what allows you to claim that. Y'all set up a system so that racism just became a way of life and was enforced by every organ of government, every social construct, and even by the church. You know, they used to say, and it's probably still true in a lot of ways, that 11 o'clock Sunday morning is the most segregated hour in America. Well, that's part of systemic racism too.
Yeah, there was a reason there was a Southern Baptist and a Southern Methodist.
Well, yes, there were. Yes, there is.
I mean, I think that there's no question that there's systemic racism throughout virtually every institution, from how our cities are founded, how we segregate communities. Even just as a local, wannabe city council member at one time, but formerly on the city planning commission and zoning commission, to see how a city grows and how the suburban sprawl that happens creates sort of a separation of our communities unintentionally, because our people can't afford the $250,000 house, and suddenly those people end up behind a gated community, and now we have segregation to the point to where, it's almost like we're going back to those castles back in the medieval times. And all of that evolves or creates a community, a city that kind of repeats itself over and over and over and over again, decade after decade, as a community doesn't know each other. I can say this as someone that came from a Mexican dad, very old school. My dad isn't racist because he doesn't have any way to control anybody's life, but he was prejudiced against black folks because his son got his femur broken on our own front porch when he was 4 years old. But he was prejudiced. And that had to be taught out of my dad, that things are safe. You need to quit thinking that way. Let me prove it to you, because you're going to dinner with me and my friend and my son's friends and all dads and coaches. We're going to prove this. As cities and governments, we have to establish policies that bring communities together and not always put it on the church, on a community group. Without government, without proper government that looks at all the opportunities to gather people together, not just by creating a festival, but how do I make them live together, work together, go to school together, and not continue to segregate them from Pasco High School to South Hills High School, because that's the most performing school, so we need to make that more white, less Latino, all these things. Is that systemic racism? Hell yeah, it is. Is it systemic racism that the police department doesn't ask their police officers to live within the communities that they're going to serve? That's systemic racism, because you could make a difference, and that community would know, that officer would know that community more. So what is systemic racism? What are the efforts within government and our institutions to combat racism on a day-to-day basis? And what are your policies that you're promoting? How are they changing the existence of racism? It was created back in the slave days. I mean, let's be honest. Do we really believe that some people in whatever community, in the Anglo community, believe that an African American is still absolutely equal to them, when generation after generation they weren't really even human? Is it gone? Of course not. It's not gone. It's going to be a long time. But going back again to poly, in how it integrated, it was very violent between black and white folks, and black and brown folks, and brown and black folks. Everyone was very violent. And then suddenly disco music and rap and breakdancing changed everything. I can remember at a point in my life looking back and going, what happened to all that fighting that everyone was doing? We healed within the black and brown community. We healed within the white and black community at that time in Southeast Fort Worth and Poly.
But now you got a president saying, watch out, people in suburbia, black folk are going to come and ruin your neighborhoods.
That's the proof of how deep the systemic racism goes and how far we've already gone to allow this segregation to happen again through suburban sprawl. This is decades and decades and decades of work. I mean, it's just like one little tidbit. Anyone that's here in their professional life has some example of how systemic racism exists within the institution that they've worked in, within the media, within city government, you name it, the church. It exists. We have to just say it exists, tell the real history of this nation, tell the real history of slavery in this nation, tell the real history of Texas history, read different books, promote different books, and then start talking about it so that we can heal. And absolutely, we need to be in the same room. We need to go to church together. We need to pray together. We need to love together and one another. And that thing absolutely can happen. And it needs to be promoted from government, because individuals aren't going to do it. The rich man at the business, he's not going to do it. It has to be government. The government is the largest institution with the most amount of money, and we have to demand that from our nation. And I'm sorry I'm talking so long, but I want to say one of the things to Kyev's point earlier, talking about an ability to bring us together, and I think Q made it too. We always said if there would be some common enemy for all humanity, the human race would come together and battle that common enemy. And here we are with the coronavirus. And now we have no one body, whether it's NATO or the World Health Organization, now one body to say this is how we're going to combat this one enemy together and allow that to be something that we did together. We could have all beat this together. Now everyone's got a different system. And the most powerful voice in the world spoke to so many, and so many believe them in Brazil, in Mexico, in India, where their outbreak is worse than ours. You have to understand that power and that missed opportunity, that opportunity still exists because this coronavirus is not done. So the leader that rises up, new leadership, Reverend Tatum, new leadership is going to be what changes, what brings that love back. Because there is that almost powerful element that is love between us that know how to love. And I believe that we're stronger than those racists. It's us to put them out.
Bobbie, I want to just chime in a little bit. Commissioner Brooks said that racism is the disease of the heart. And it's also the poison to the soul, because you lose your ability to have compassion and empathy for humanity. We oftentimes say that slavery is America's original sin. Go back further, it was greed that was America's original sin. It was the loss of the consciousness, the having to lose the ability to see us as human in order for them to fulfill this slavery mechanism. Simply for greed, simply for money. And, you know, those of us who can read, you can go back further enough to see that it's systemic. Go to DC and look at the museum, you'll see it's systemic. And it was all for profit. Fast forward, you've been the beneficiary of this for 400 years. You didn't have to fight for it. It was given to you. Of course you don't have to have a consciousness for it. I've been talking to a lot of my conservative white friends, and I do have some, because I'm not understanding them at all with President Trump. I'm not, and I talked to him. And I told him, just the other day you were saying local control. You know, just the other day you said states' rights. But now you're trying to control the whole process, and it's all because of the economy. So my point is, we all have to look at that underlying sin of greed. And when you look at it, you will see at this time that we already have that gap. And if we're not careful, Brother Q, it's going to widen. That's why this election and everyone in this room and those that we know must find a way to pull this together, because there is still a real chance of President Trump getting reelected if we don't. That's the reality. So in studying racism, this is what I found out, and that's why I think this is the time. We had an experiment called Archie Bunker's Neighborhood, where we broke people down in their different neighborhoods. Gay over here, black over here, brown over here, white over here, poor trash over here. And the psyche of it, whoever was the leader, determined how to treat everyone in that community. And they would treat the black, brown, and gays horrible and ignored it. As long as the whites were benefiting, they made a mockery of them. Why don't they get themselves better? But whoever was controlling the community determined the treatment. Here's what changed the community. It wasn't until the white power structure decided that that wasn't fair to those other groups that the whole system changed. In the experiment, just the psychology of nature of the people we were dealing with, we kept seeing that no matter how much we pushed, no matter how much we got upset and broke the rules, it wasn't until the institutional system changed. And for the first time, I see Fort Worth on the precipice of it. I'm not confident we're at that point, and Commissioner, some of y'all can tell me even better, that white power structure is gonna change unless we change it. And we have a chance to change it on many levels in Fort Worth that I've never seen before. And so I'm hoping, it's my prayer, I don't know. I don't want Fort Worth to go the way of other cities that burn up and go down. I'm sure none of us want that. But if you continue to ignore the trauma, something is going to trigger to make that a reality. Those young people did something we've never had the nerve to do, let alone accomplish, and that was take over Sundance Square and travel over 7th Street Bridge to the business district and challenge the existence of their economy. And so those of you who are in government and other leadership roles, somebody's going to have to get an ear to the system and say, either you're going to change it or it's going to be destroyed.
Well, you said a key thing. You said denial. And that's one thing that white people are still doing. The Attorney General still says there's not systemic racism, and there is. And until white people come together with a voice that is lifting up people of color, because people of color are the ones who are marginalized more so than anybody right now during this pandemic. And until white people stop saying that systemic racism doesn't exist and stop saying, I don't have white privilege, I don't know what white privilege is, it doesn't exist. It's not a struggle about your life. It's to say that other people are not on an equal playing field because of the color of their skin. And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get white people, conservative white people, all white people, to come together and listen to people of color talk about these hard things that a lot of my friends who are just middle-aged white women don't understand. And through the group that I formed, we are having, those difficult conversations right now. And I'm one of the people who are learning. I'm learning how to talk to black people in a way that I've never talked to black people before. Ask them hard questions, say, what can I do? And we are changing. And you said or one of you guys said it can't happen with an individual, but individuals can start this conversation, and it can, my sister told me, take care of your bubble. And then your bubble grows. And as my bubble grows as an educator, I have a responsibility to all the people that my ripple effect from my bubble bursting affects, and I can make a change as an individual. But white people are the ones who are going to have to, let's face it, the white man rules our country. And women and black people and brown people and gay people have to try to make the white man listen to us.
Bobbie?
We all have to have a voice, and we have to have a real conversation, not just the little sessions that you talk with. If we could have a conversation where people will be really willing to say why I don't like you. It's because, too, that they've heard it. Their parents didn't like black people. Their parents. We have people in the sheriff's department. We have people everywhere that didn't like it because they grew up. They were being taught it. Now they are grown. And one of the things that we have to do that's sitting here on this panel, again, it goes back to educating, because you got an ignorant person who came through school and didn't learn a whole bunch. Now you have the pandemic, and you have all these other factors. You have the new coin word, implicit bias. It's racist. And we have the inner self has to be changed. It starts like the commissioner, the heart, the mind. The psyche need to be changed to say, I have not been fair to the other race. But there aren't many people that want to do that, because we camouflage our feelings. We project what we think people want us to hear. Our elected officials, the changes, we need to also teach our children personal responsibility, that even though we are going through this, and they are doing things because they too are racist. They say, the white man has it, I'm gonna tear it down. I'm gonna burn it down. In effect, they are affecting their families, jobs in their community, because the white man is not bringing that store back in when you have burned it down because it's owned by them. all those jobs are going to be lost. And then the court system is not going to get any better. We have judges that have been taught and grown, lived all their lives, that have deep-bedded racist thoughts. They come out in court in some way or manner, you guys. You have to be vigilant. You have to be cognizant of it. You have to be able to bring it to their attention, and hopefully that you are not labeled and your clients are not labeled when you go into court and fight for their rights. Young people need to learn right now history. If they learn some history, they will see the struggle that their ancestors, that their grandparents, their uncles and aunts have fought for. And then they will do better learning history, do better to help protect and serve. And we can use that group of young people to be those leaders, not just the ones that were in the march, you guys. It is, racism is on black side. We can be racist. Everybody can be racist.
We need to
And
teach
we
the
just
truth.
need to talk about it.
Go ahead.
I think one of the reasons that we're seeing such great tension and conflict between the races today is because of the demographic changes in America. America is rapidly becoming a majority-minority nation. And Anglos are feeling threatened by the loss of power, the power to control governmental systems. That's why we have in the legislature such fervent attempts to suppress the black and brown vote, to gerrymander the way legislative districts are drawn so that Anglos can continue to hold on to power to which they're no longer entitled by virtue of the numbers. It's greed for money, but it's also greed for power. And that's why Trump's message resonates so strongly with his base, because his base is scared that they are in the process of being overwhelmed and overtaken.
Commissioner, we need to be scared so that we can get out there and show that one vote, one by one, will make a change. And we need to get that message to our young adults, to our people that are 17 years old, that will be 18, and on up. We need to be practicing that and teaching that every day, the relevancy of your voice. Whenever I see a young person, I'll say, are you registered to vote? Some of them will say, no, I haven't even thought about it. No, you have the power to make changes in your community, in your government, in your schools, in your hospitals, every level you have in the United States. You have the power in that little one vote that people died for and were cheated, and now we're still being cheated by the voter suppression.
Well, I mean, what I noticed after the George Floyd death, the demonstrations in Fort Worth, I went down every evening to look. I didn't participate, but I went down, just wanted to see it happen. And what I noticed was, and it's back to Stacy's point, and I think Kyev's point, and your point about young people getting involved, the majority of the people that I saw demonstrating were young, and the majority were white.
Yes.
Which said to me, and I thought about Birmingham when the kids got out.
Yeah.
I thought about Soweto when the kids got out.
Yeah.
The change started to come. And that's what I felt, and I know, Stacy, you're dealing with it at Martin. and trying to start the conversation. But frankly, I had lost hope until I saw those kids coming down a one-way street in the opposite direction, and then going to the courthouse or city hall or wherever they decided to go that day. And so I'm wondering, is there a change coming? Sam Cooke said a change is going to come. I'm still waiting on it. Are we at that point? And I know you had reservations. You've been to City Hall how many times in the past year?
2 minutes for free. For free.
Yeah, but is it? I mean, are you seeing it?
Well, let me say this, because, and I'll flip it to you, Quinn. These young people's energy is unreal in terms of the resistance to the power structure, whether it's downtown or in the church. It's real. And it's based on not racism, Bobbie. I think it's hurt. The hurt is pushing them out. And we've ignored the hurt. And not just the system, but all of us. That they even took over our press conference. And it was well put together, but they're saying, you're not listening to us either. And so those of us 40, 50, 60 babies, we got to start listening to them, because they're going to move forward with or without us. The difference between Birmingham or Selma and now is some of those were trained to do civil rights work. Some of those, they had leadership that was seasoned, that they listened to. They had freedom schools and other things to prepare them for this insurmountable task ahead of them. They were prepared. This group, while they have the same hurt, they're not as prepared as that group. And we're trying to reel them back in and say, hey, we're sorry. We went after this American dream and they told us we could have it, and we got hit on the head, and we're back with you now. But it's a disconnect in a way that they are finding common grounds with other races, other genders, other preferences, and they are creating this nucleus of leadership that I haven't seen before. And if we could somehow get with them, I think we'll do better, because it's not color for them, it's a consciousness.
Yeah, but it's only partially a change in the heart.
Sure is.
I think it's mostly a recognition with that generation of young people that the same systems that have held black people and brown people back for so many years are now beginning to hold young Anglo kids back with college degrees. There's no opportunity out there. And they are finally beginning to recognize that we're all in the same boat, that this system is beginning to oppress all of us. I'm sorry, Q, go ahead, brother.
No need to apologize at all. And I'll backtrack a little bit and directly answer the question that you asked there, Barbara, just because I heard some things during the conversation that I've been kind of grappling with myself. So one, when we're talking about that everyone can be racist, I just fundamentally disagree with the statement that everyone can be racist. In my estimation, people of color cannot be racist, because when we talk about racism, we're talking about the act of being able to oppress based on someone's race. People of color cannot oppress because we don't have those power structures in place. Therefore, we can't be racist. Doesn't mean we can't have prejudice, like Ramon talked about earlier. We can be biased, we can have bigotry, but we absolutely cannot oppress based upon race. So we can't be racist in this very essence. And then also hearing about that we need to be scared in order to be able to vote. And I don't think that fear really is a motivating factor for people of color when it comes to voting. I think the fear is the thing that keeps apathy in place. I think fear is the thing that keeps us from getting to the polls so many times, because if I go to this poll, I'm damned if I do, damned if I don't. It don't matter who the politician is, they're really not going to do anything for me anyway, so what's the point? I think that what really happens when we talk about people coming out to vote, it has to be inspiration. They have to feel like there's actually going to be someone there that's going to actually represent their best interests, put their ideas on the table and try to pass those things. And that's what's going to make someone say, I'm willing to go take my time to put my ballot in, because I actually think that person is going to represent me. So it has to be the inspiration versus the fear of the whole thing. So now when we get to, and then the fact that you had to ask the question, and I know you're doing your job as a moderator, of course, but so not shooting the messenger, right? But the fact that in 2020 we had to ask the question whether or not it's systemic racism is exactly to Brother Brooks' point a minute ago when he said we have climate deniers right now. Like that, all the science and everything we've seen in the history of the world will lead someone to still be able to deny that climate change is a real thing. It's the same thing that's happening when we're talking about systemic racism. Like, if there is no systemic racism, then why in the world do we have to have amendments to the Constitution? That means we had it all right the first time. We shouldn't have to amend anything if we didn't have systemic racism. Amendments themselves are saying, let's go back and change something because it wasn't right. Why do we have a Civil Rights Act? Why do we have a Fair Housing Act? Why do we have a Voting Rights Act? We don't need any of those things if in fact there was no racism embedded in the first place, but we have to have them because black and brown people weren't able to have these things in the same constitutional right as their white counterparts, so we had to fix it. That's what an amendment is. That's what passing legislation is in the first place, because it was proven that black folks can't get the same home loan as their white counterpart. That's systemic racism at its very core. Am I hopeful after all that? Yes, and so I mean, and I'll let you speak, Bobbie, on to it. But when you say, "Am I hopeful now within this moment?" It really is, and I just met her today. But it's folks like you, Stacy, that allows me to be able to have that hope. Everybody up here on this panel, legitimately, I already know and I'm friends with and have a phone number, and we talk, and I know the struggle and the fight that we're with. I never met you before, but it's folks like you that does give me the hope, because Reverend Tatum said it a little bit earlier. He said it earlier about the fact that, even in the experimental space that he was talking about, when white people decided that the white power structure had to be torn down and people had to be allowed into that, that's what it's really going to take. And so when I see people like yourself who could easily turn a blind eye and say, well, kind of y'all's problem is all good, but being willing to say, hey, I'm willing to learn. I'm willing to come to the table. I see injustice happening, and I'm willing to tell my friends and family. I'm willing to take it into my spaces. That is the part that gives me hope. So even like we was talking about those young people demonstrating, the fact that we're seeing white young people out there alongside black and brown young people demonstrating, everyone saying that it's not right, that's what gives me the hope that we might actually be on the true precipice of change.
Let me, Stacy wants to say
Thank you.
something, and then Bobbie, I want to come and ask you something specific.
Thank you.
Go ahead,
Thank you so much for saying that. And another thing I wanted to also say, I'm not trying to pat myself on the back or anything, but I'm willing to lose friends too, because I have lost friends. And if standing up for the Black Lives Matter movement and people of color means I lose friends, they weren't really my friends anyway, and I don't really care. But I know the difference between right and wrong. And I know my friends know the difference between right and wrong. And you said something really important. They are climate change deniers, but they know the truth. Donald Trump knows that the pandemic was serious. He chose not to tell us. They marinate in lies, and they perpetuate their fears to keep their base whipped up. We know right and wrong. My friends who are on board with me in my group and my family, it's preaching to the choir when I talk to my white friends about this. It's those ones on the outside that I love that are also in my family that I know are racist. Those are the ones I'm trying to get to and teach and learn, and those are the ones that have to listen. It's all about listening and not being afraid. So thank you for saying that, but I just wanted to add that to you.
I want to ask you too, I mean, and you can come in on this, Bobbie, I'm coming to you too. Okay. When you hear people attack the public schools for, quote, being too liberal or whatever, and then you had the president this past week decide that we weren't teaching things right, and rather than focus on 1619 and slavery, we need to focus on 1776. How does that make you as an educator feel?
It angers me. They took the Tuskegee Airmen out of the textbooks. They're teaching lies. They're taking the truth out of our history books and perpetuating an agenda. And it's infuriating. And the attack on education and saying that colleges are liberal cesspools, things like that, those words being used about education, the key to everything is education. Our young people need to be educated so they're not so susceptible to all the fake things that are on the internet. And the internet, their faces are glued to those phones. Whether we like it or not, they are glued to the screen. We have to teach them how to discern fact from fiction. And it's very hurtful, and it angers me a lot that they attack our education.
I want to just, I've been wanting to kind of kick in a little something, kind of we talk about healing, and we know we want to talk about what it's going to take to heal. And I think there's a learning process necessary, and I say this as an elected official. One of the things that's the most bitter thing for me to hear in Austin, Texas, is when another legislature tells me that problem that I'm describing just doesn't exist in their district. Well, that must be your problem because we don't have that problem. And so there's this lack of even a desire to want to know more. And that's what Stacy's talking about, educating folks. Michelle Obama, in her speech here a couple of weeks ago, talked about what she needed in a leader was a leader that had empathy. Someone that wants to dig a little deeper and ask you questions, find out how I can help you. What can I do to help lift you up? What can I do to help lift up your family? In Fort Worth, Texas, and in Texas in general, all over our country, right now, we need young people, all people, to be taught what should I be looking for in a leader? A leader that can take us out of this depression that we're in so that they see a reason for their vote. The education that's necessary in telling the story in whatever means we have needs to be taking place in every opportunity, not just an opportunity like this, which is incredibly put together, but in any event where there's many people around, we have to have the courage to stand up and tell our story. And I want to tell this story. I had an Anglo pool builder customer of mine tell me how I felt about the people protesting and burning things down. That he wants to get engaged, but he can't because he doesn't really understand why people are protesting. He knows what happened with Floyd was wrong, but he doesn't really know. And the reason why he doesn't know and feel it is because he's not black. I said, no. That's not it. I said, do you remember your first time? And he said, hey, what are you asking me? I said, do you remember the first time you were arrested? I said, it was my 13th birthday. I couldn't wait to go to putt-putt. I was turning 13 years old. I thought I was going to meet the girls that night. And apparently I was too good at Miss Pac-Man because the white kid came to me and told me he wanted to play. The manager came up and I said, hey, I've got 3 quarters in here. I'm not going anywhere. Then a police officer asked me to come leave. And because I spoke up, he got mad at me, threw me on the ground, and arrested me. It was my 13th birthday. Somewhere in there, I'm still a little angry at this officer. He arrested me on my birthday. And just like my mom said, if you ever go to juvenile detention center, boy, I'm not going to go pick you up. You're going to spend the night. And I spent the night there. All these stories exist in the black and brown community and in the white community. If Stacy doesn't want to know about it, we're not going to heal. We need people that want that in their gut, to want to know more, and to at least start asking those questions. So the fact that I know he's a Trumpster and he asked the question, and I had an opportunity to change his mind, I hope that we can do that, and that should be the expectation of all of our leaders. So that when somebody wants to lead, it's not just about how much money they have, which is what we're seeing. And we have to really think about how we're doing it in our own families and promoting what is and what a leader looks like.
Okay. Bobbie, let me ask you this, because I want to get, we're about out of time, folks. We have to look to the law to set us straight.
Yes.
To the courts, the high courts. And especially when I consider that Ruth Ginsburg has died.
Yes.
And there's a vacancy. And and already we put judges all over the country, over 250, I think, who will change laws for the next generation.
Yes.
And if you have a court that can do that, Are you worried that the court system may not be able to uphold us anymore? Or
I am worried that the Supreme Court, which is the highest court of the land that makes these landmark decisions that impact all of our lives, is going to forever be changed. And let me tell you, this is what the regular people didn't know. When they marching for George Floyd, and when they did a Tatiana Jefferson here in Fort Worth, it had died down. So you had young people uprising when Tatiana Jefferson got shot by the officer. Going down to the city hall, guess what? There was a plateau. It didn't keep it up until you got a George Floyd happen. That's not even here. Then they started uprising again. So the changes need to come. The judicial system, I'm so sorry about our Supreme Court justice. That lady was making a difference on that Supreme Court. She stayed until the end. And me as a female lawyer and lawyers all across this country that knew that our systems need to be secured with some people that are on the bench, that 9 justices that will make a difference when we appeal our cases to the Supreme Court. That is a void. And then to say you're replacing her within 24 hours of her demise, even talking like that. So the black lawyers and lawyers all across this country, when you all were marching out there, we were saying it needs to be the changes in the courts, the changes in the minds of the judges that are going to hear these cases that are coming before them, the police brutality cases, the immunity, qualified immunity. So you can march out in the street all you want to. If the law is not changed, you're not going to make a change when you get into the court system, because you need to change at the legislature on the meaning of qualified immunity that is there for these police officers. We need to educate our people that are marching. You can march in the streets all you want to. You can have so many people. When it gets to the court, you're not going to make a dent in the law, because the legislatures and our legislators and our congresspeople need to look at this stuff. The local people need to change the laws on immunity, change the laws on profiling, police profiling, change the laws on how they arrest and use, say, certain holes. Those things can go up to the Supreme Court. We have a void now. We have a void. And I wish some of the legislators, those senators, be strong enough to say no at this time until we can have a change in our leadership.
okay,
And fear does matter. Fear make us do things, do positive things. And it is good to have all feelings, happy feelings, sad feelings, fearfulness. It does. It makes you move, get up off your butt and march or speak and vote.
So when
Q,
it comes,
briefly.
yeah. So when it comes to the court system aspect of it, I believe there still is hope there when because if we think about the time of Thurgood Marshall and the court systems that he was going up against when he was winning Supreme Court cases, the blatant racism and discrimination that was being placed there, and yet he still, because his integrity to the law, his argument about what he really was able to present when it came to this is what the paper says, this is how it's supposed to be implemented, bringing that common sense logic into it as well. If Thurgood Marshall during that time was able to win at the exponential rate that he was able to win going up against what he was going up against, I do think that that same thing can happen today, because we have at least seen enough evidence that even when these other judges are appointed to the court, that still the letter of the law so many times can win out. I mean, even just during this time period right now, we've had President Trump in office, we've seen the Supreme Court do monumental things in the lives of LGBTQ people, and that wouldn't even really been fathomed under the current presidency, and yet we were able to see it. So there is still hope there when it comes to the supreme law of the land, that they can still be legislated and judicial correctly.
It just is so much we have to do. And before you get to the Supreme Court, you got to work at the local level, the state level. That's what gets us. And we got to understand that. Even when people are saying, fire the person, you got these laws with a civil service commission. There are certain things that the law prevents you. I don't care how you march it. That's why education We who have the knowledge, education of our people that are marching, so they can be an intelligent marcher. They can say it, and then if you're saying it and they know you are intelligent and you got the right position on it, they know, oh, we are in trouble. They know what to do to make these changes.
Roy, quickly.
I was just going to say that historically, there was always sort of a symbiotic relationship between the civil rights movement and the Supreme Court of the United States of America. Dr. King believed in that relationship. If we can just get to the Supreme Court, then we can get justice. My daddy even believed that if we can just get to the Supreme Court, not through these local courts, you're not going to get a darn thing through the local courts.
What would your dad? I have
But
a
if you
question on that.
can just get to the Supreme Court,
It's a long
What would
way.
your daddy say about where we are now, if he were here?
he would say, my God, my God.
How did we get here, huh?
Roy's dad is one of the premier civil rights leaders in this city. We're really out of time, but I need a show of hands at least. How many of you on this day have hope that we're overcoming? Or are you still pessimistic about where we are? People have hope?
How long are we talking about hope? Like, is there a time frame? Do I have like hope in the future period, or like in the near future, in the far future? Hope period.
Yes.
You always have hope.
Yes. Yes.
You have to have hope.
Faith, hope, and art.
Okay, well, really work. Listen, I really appreciate. I didn't get through a quarter of my questions here. I had 5 pages of questions, and y'all talk so much.
We didn't get to solutions at all.
Thanks to all of you for doing this, and that'll wrap it up for us.
Thank you, Bob.
Okay, let me tell y'all something.
Thank you.
To get from the local level to the Supreme Court, it takes a long time to get up there.
Yes,
Once
it
you get to
does.
the Supreme Court has to say, we want to hear your issue. You can get up there, and then they'll send you right back, and you're not there. So only a few cases get to the Supreme Court, you all. And so while we're trying to get to the Supreme Court, we need to make the local courts, the state Supreme Court, the state appellate criminal courts. Those are the parts that really affect
luck
our
with
lives.
that, Bobbie.
And when we, yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
thank you all very much one more
Thank you.
time.
Thank you for having us.
The topic for today's discussion was healing our community, and we never quite got to that issue. Healing our community, to me, is at least a 2-part exercise. We have to heal the spirit of our community, and we've got to heal the physical body of our community. In having said those 2 things, we have to address the spiritual aspects of racism. And we have to address the physical aspects of the pandemic. To me, the spiritual and the physical are linked. My favorite African proverb says, when you pray, move your feet. When you pray, move your feet. Meaning, don't just sit back and ask God for something and wait for it to happen. Ask Him. God is all powerful. He owns the cattle on 1,000 hills. He can do anything. But don't just sit there and wait for healing to happen to you. Pursue healing. Pursue it by taking care of your own health, by owning your own health, and by doing the things that will be healthy for our community. And the number one thing in my mind that encompasses all of that is voting. Vote like your life depends upon it, because it does.
Indeed, and so yeah, to your point when you talk about the healing that has to take place, so the organization that my brothers and I started, Community Frontline, it really is our fundamental belief that the healing is truly going to happen through multiracial, multicultural efforts. It really is going to take all of us. It really has to get to a point to where you can look outside of who you are, look outside of just the demographic boxes you checked, and see that there's suffering happening in a community that's different than yours. When you really can take that, when you really can see someone else's pain, someone else's injury, someone else's feeling of suppression and oppression that they're under, no matter what their demographic boxes are, it really does lead a person to activate. So those relationships have to be built within there. If their relational capacity is extended, and you really can see someone within their own humanity, that is what's going to be the healing process. Each community, each demographic has a litany of talent and resources that the other one may not have, but what Dr. King talked about all the time was this interdependence that we have to one another. If we can realize that interdependence, if we realize that we're really not going to make it without the brother and sister that's different than us, if that realization really happens and we put that into action, that is the societal healing and the community healing that we really will be able to move forward with.
I completely agree, and I think action is a key to healing, and action through doing something. And the group that I started was 10 for Change. That's the number 10 for Change, and it's a Facebook group. And we've put action into how to fight systemic racism by doing actual acts, pledging yourself to do acts to fight racism. And you're going to choose 10 things that you do to fight racism, and then you challenge 10 people to do 10 things to fight racism. And I'm an English teacher, not a math teacher, but that's a lot of actions. And when you put a lot of actions out in the world, you do heal a community. And I'd like to also say another thing, the second thing, is through art. Art, music, literature, poetry, all of those are salves for your soul. And if you can seek out art, it always brings a community together. If you can create art, it helps heal your own wounds. And those two things, action and art together, are a great way to heal.
Indeed. Light overcomes darkness.
Amen.
Love beats hate every time.
Every time. Let's close with a statement from Dr. King. One of my favorite Dr. King quotes is that the arc of the moral universe is long, but it always bends toward justice. Now, the thing about that is kind of related to what I said earlier. Sure. Sometimes you got to help that moral arc bend.
Been a little quicker.
You got to get out there and do the work that will bend the curve to make this a more just and moral world. It's up to us.